Hello, and welcome to Cooking Time. I'm David Martone, Executive Chef at Classic Thyme Cooking School in Westfield, New Jersey. This evening we have 3 items on our menu. We're doing a steak au pois, which is a pan-to-plate type of dish. We're doing a creamy sherry-infused garlic soup. And we're doing a souffle for dessert, infused with Grand Marnier and orange zest. We'll start by doing the soup. We'll add our garlic to a pan that we've been heating up with some olive oil. I'm going to add a bit more olive oil to it. We want to toast this garlic until it's nice and tender. We're using whole garlic cloves, and we want to toast them around. We don't want them to get too dark in color, but we want them to get tender enough so that when we blend them with our immersion blender, they'll be creamy smooth. We've also taken some day-old French bread. We had a nice baguette. We sliced it in half-inch slices, and then we took those slices and we cut them each into 4 pieces. It's good to use day-old bread so it's a little bit stiffer and the moisture's already dried out of it. Garlic is toasting up nicely. This is a bit of a spicy soup, so we're using a paprika that's of a hot variety. When you put the paprika in, you'll start to develop a lot of smoke, so you want to make sure that you have a good ventilation system when you're doing this. You can see our garlic is starting to get golden brown. We don't want the garlic to get too dark because if the garlic gets burnt, it'll bitter the entire soup. Put some of our bread in. We want to do the same thing with the bread. We want to start to toast that around. Again, be careful about creating a smoky condition because once you put the bread in, it'll start to soak up the olive oil. And you don't want to burn the edges of the bread because you can have the same problem with the bitterness as we discussed with the garlic. Right now, most of the oil is absorbed into the bread, so we're keeping that bread moving in the pan so that we don't get too dark with the browning. We're going to put our vent fan on now. We're going to get our sherry ready to deglaze. We're just about ready with the bread. This is a very quick soup. It goes together in about 30 minutes total cooking time. And although it's called a creamy soup, there's actually no cream in it. You can put some heavy cream, which will give it a real silky texture, but it still has a very nice creamy appearance just by using the bread as a thickening agent. Okay, we're going to add our paprika. And as you can see, that's already starting to smoke a bit. Always stand back when you add that because this paprika can really get right up your nose. We're going to add our sherry. A little bit more. You can see that nice rich color that's now developed with the sherry, coating the bread nicely. We're going to add our chicken stock. We're using a homemade chicken stock. You can use a variety purchased in a supermarket, but every step of the way, if you use the best products, you'll get the best end result. We make a fresh chicken stock here at the cooking school, and it has no salt in it. It has obviously no preservatives because we make it here and we store it for a very short period of time. A little bit more chicken stock. We're going to bring this to a simmer We're going to cover it. We're going to let it simmer for about 30 minutes. Now we're going to get started on our souffle. We have some eggs that we need to separate. We're just going to go back and forth with the yolk from shell to shell, keeping the whites in one bowl, and we'll put the yolks here that we'll whisk first. This is a very, very simple souffle, as souffles go. I remember once guiding my brother through doing this souffle 3,000 miles away. Had some house guests over, and he decided to make this souffle and realized in the 11th hour that he had never done it before. Called me here, and I stayed on the phone while he did the whole thing, and he had 6 happy guests because the souffle rose very nicely and actually held its volume. We had a tiny bit of yolk in there. We usually fish that out with the shell. You can have a little bit of white in the yolk, but you don't want any yolk in the white. The fat in the yolk will weigh down the white, and you'll lose your volume once you whip it up. We're going to put our whites in our stand mixer. We're going to start them off very slowly. We have our yolks. We're going to add our sugar. We're adding half of the sugar that's in the recipe. We're going to add some Grand Marnier, just a small amount. This recipe calls for 1 ounce. And we have to zest some orange. The zest from the orange is actually this outer coloring. Once you get a little bit deeper and you see the white, you're into the pith. That's where it starts to turn bitter. We're using a common zester, and all we have to do is just start to run this orange over the zester, and it starts to develop nice little threads of zest. So this recipe actually calls for the zest from 1 orange. The reason we start these egg whites off on a low speed is because if we do it very high, you develop an uneven pattern of bubbles. And then again, you'll lose your volume, and you'll perhaps have failure in your souffle once it comes out of the oven. These zesters were a great invention. They're developed based on a rasp that was used in the auto body industry, and somebody decided to make them out of stainless, and they make them in all different varieties of coarseness. They have certain ones for cheese, for zesting citrus, for using for spices. You can see we're developing a nice amount of zest in this, and this is where the orange flavor comes from, this and the Grand Marnier. There's actually no orange juice in this souffle. Now we're going to whisk together these egg yolks along with the sugar and the zest and the Grand Marnier while we're letting our egg whites start to form soft peaks. What we want to do with this is whisk it heavily until it actually gets very thin and creamy in texture, and it gets very pale in color.